Welcome back, colleagues. It's good to be with you. This is Learn Extra Teacher Talk. Our focus is on physical sciences, and we're talking about misconceptions related to force with Angela Stott from UCT. And we're moving on, having established that based on research that has been done, that there are a number of misconceptions around force. We've spoken a little bit about impetus, but now we want to deal with how to remedy those misconceptions. So Angela's been developing some software at UCT called iQuizz. So tell us a little bit about what iQuizz is, and we're going to have a demonstration of it shortly.
Yes, iQuizz is a branched quiz. It consists of a number of multiple choice slides and then other information slides which are connected with one another. So you have a multiple choice slide, and each of the options is hyperlinked. That means when you click on the option, it takes you on a route appropriate to how you clicked.
Okay.
So if you answer correctly, it takes you on the main part of the quiz. But if you answer incorrectly, it takes you on a side branch, which is designed to remedy whatever probably was wrong in your mind for you to have answered the way you did.
Does it then give you the opportunity to ask that question again?
That's right. So it takes you on a loop, and hopefully once it's done the fixing, it comes back again to that original question. And well, in some cases you can go on the loop again if you didn't get it. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but then hopefully this time you get the right answer, and then you carry on the main branch.
Okay, well, let's have a look. It opens up quite nicely in a browser. So here's a question. You push a block. While your hand touches the block, do you apply a force on the block? Yes or no? I don't know. So shall we say yes?
Okay.
For that one, and hopefully.
So that we're still in the main.
We're in the main branch because that was correct. Are you doing work on the block? You've applied the force. Well. So
let's answer incorrectly.
Let's answer incorrectly and say no.
I must click on the B.
I must click on the B.
And then it comes up with a little movie. There is actually sound in it. I don't think you'll hear the sound here, but we use multimedia. So sometimes pictures, sometimes movie. This is narrated, so there is also sound to it, and it's busy telling the person what work is, when work is done, and that in this case you are doing work because you are applying a force through a distance.
Okay. And then obviously you can close.
So this is a very small side branch. It's just one slide and then we go back. Sometimes it's a series of question answer because it's quite a deep-seated misconception that needs to be rooted out, hopefully. And so then it's a longer branch that consists of a number of questions and answers and so on.
Okay. But that one particularly linked, and I suppose then you come back to the original question,
right, yes.
and hopefully you're going to now say yes. Did I click on it? Yes.
And then
do you transfer energy? So it's not just following one thing, although it's using one context to link all the science concepts to that. Is that right?
Yes. Well, you can create it like you like. So the idea is just this thing that it undergoes a dialogue with you. So it asks you a question, and then it responds appropriately to your response.
Okay.
So obviously you can then write the content on that as you wish. This is a prototype. It's the only prototype that exists at the moment. Okay. That's designed to try and fix, if I can put it in that way, the misconception of impetus.
Okay, so at the moment we're looking at, but you've branched off. You're not just looking at Newton 1 traditionally.
Yes.
You're looking at energy and work pulled together.
Because, as I said earlier, there are different ways to address misconceptions, and I try to use all of them here. So although obviously the examples we've looked at now don't address all of them.
Yes.
But so on one hand, I try to create cognitive conflict, that sometimes I give them information that doesn't fit with what they probably think, to try and make them realize, hey, they've got a problem.
Yes.
But then I also try and use concept substitution, where I build on what they already know. and just change the label. So I'm working up to that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make sure they understand what energy is, so that, because obviously it's no use saying to them, you know, the thing you're thinking about is energy if they don't yet understand it. So first just finding out, do they understand it work, do they understand energy, so that I can do that concept substitution later, showing them that the thing they're thinking of when they say that there's still a force acting is energy. And then towards the end of this particular prototype, then I try to lead them to the general understanding. So, because I said we also have to generalize so that we don't just understand in this context, but in more contexts.
Well, let's see if we can get to another topic, because you can
go to carpet.
So let's go to carpet.
So here I'm using a technique called reasoning to the extreme. So because I'm trying to make them realize that, okay, impetus, and also this thing that an object will move forever at a constant velocity if there are no forces acting, horizontal forces acting on it. That's counterintuitive.
Yes.
So the way that I go about that is that I ask them, well, what happens when we make it slide on a carpet? And I mean, obviously they will know, because they've dealt with things like that, that after a short while it will stop. And then we go next step, we make it smoother, and we make it now a wooden floor, and then clearly it will go further. Then we go even smoother to ice, it'll go even further. And so we're reasoning to the extreme, well, if we could make it as smooth as possible, it couldn't be smoother, it'll go forever. So it's not only that I'm challenging impetus, I'm also trying to develop this understanding, which I think is very related to impetus. But perhaps you can just go to, answer this correctly. All right, so it slows down, slow and soon stops. A.
Yes, A. Just
no, you have to be on the A.
On the A, but we'll get there. There we go.
All right, this is a crucial question here. Why does it slow? I usually find no problem there. Okay, friction force slows it to a stop. This is fine, but now I start asking, well, how many forces are acting on it? And this is a problem. So, you know, many of them, horizontal forces, thank you, yes. So many of them, they want to say, okay, friction and another force. So let's take
Shall
that.
we
take
take that as...
And then it takes you...
Did I click on it?
On the B. All right, so this, if you can imagine the diagram, we were on the main part, and now we enter quite a large side loop, which is designed to try and make them realize that it can't be what they've said.
Yes.
If I were just to tell them, no, you're wrong, I don't think it will be so effective, because they might then compartmentalize, okay, you said it's wrong, so I better just answer you it's wrong, but I don't really know why. So what I do here is I go through all the kinds of forces there are and ask them, is that the one that's acting? So they've said friction and another force. So I go through gravitational, electrostatic, and so on, and then especially when I ask applied force, then they say yes. So that's on the route there. And
then you know
that's the problem.
That's the problem.
And then I have a little movie saying that applied forces, a contact force, can only act when the hand is in contact with the block. And so, you know, eventually they come back to the slide just before this, and then most of them do then answer correctly that it's only friction acting. Some still want to say that it's friction and another force. So initially I made them go on this whole long loop, but again, then I realized that's too frustrating. So I built in instead then an answer just saying, no, you're wrong. It's only friction acting horizontally.
But it is a real problem that it's not just confined to learners. What you're finding, and I think your research that you conducted illustrated that this, we might think, is something that learners have because we see them answering that in the final exam, but it's something that many educators, teachers have that same idea.
That's right. And what I've noticed as I've been traveling around the country is that it's not just that they have it implicitly, there actually many even teach it. So that in the story I was telling earlier about Johnny, you know, Johnny formed the misconception even though the teacher taught correctly. But many teachers, they are so sure of this misconception, they don't realize they're wrong, that they actually teach it directly. and then it's even more likely that the learners are going to learn it. Yeah.
So it's really important that as educators that we reflect on our knowledge and we reflect on the way that we're teaching. And I think that's really what we're trying to say today.
That's right.
That we need to be reflective.
That's right.
Because if we're not reflective, then we'll carry on doing the same things over and again. And if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And if you're not getting good results, well, maybe it's time to just think about what you're saying and how you're saying it. Would you agree with that?
And also, are you giving an ear to the learners? Are you asking questions that get them to say what they're thinking?
Correct.
So that are you really... you think they understand, but is it maybe a funny picture of a fish with wings, not a bird, in their mind?
Yes. And I think that what you're saying here is you've illustrated the type of questions in this quiz that you would want teachers to be asking.
That's right. So you can use this quiz electronically by engaging with it, or you can use it as a teaching aid. Or, of course, you can engage with it, make sure that you've got your understanding right, and then get the principle, the idea, and then hopefully that's what will happen. And the teachers will start asking this kind of question, but make it up themselves as they teach the various
So given the carpet example, well, how many horizontal forces are there? Identify those?
That's the crucial question, because by asking them that question, they've got to make a decision. They've got to, you can do it in various ways. For example, if you're teaching a big class, you can, if you have clickers, you can use them, but I've never had that. What I normally do is I just say, okay, so you've got option A, and that is that there's only friction acting. Option B, friction and another force. C, I don't know. Everyone close your eyes. All right, now everyone who thinks A, raise your hand. So that they close their eyes so that, they're not just going to copy the cleverest person in the class. And there's the security. And then I can know what's actually happening. Maybe sometimes ask them to discuss with one another, why are they saying what they're saying? So the point is, you need to find those crucial questions, that being one of them,
yes,
which then make them make clear what's actually in their mind. So they become aware what's in their mind, because it's very implicit. That's the other thing. And you become aware, and then you can respond.
And then you can take it from there. You can lead them down the path to getting the right concept.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay. Now, I think that we've illustrated that you can go get it all right. It's not for marks, but it's not going to assess learners at the end of the day.
Yes. I mean, for example, here, this I don't know. One teacher said, but you can't have that because then they all get 100%. But it's not about marks.
No. It's about where they're at and identifying what they're doing. It also gives them the opportunity, whoever's answering, whether teachers or learners, about what their understanding is.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's really good. But so this, you said, is a prototype pilot at the moment. Does it only address impetus?
Yes. So the purpose of the research I was doing now was to find out, well, first of all, can it work? Is it worth putting time and effort and money into developing it? And so I needed to find out, well, can it actually help shift misconceptions? And then also to understand, well, how should we design it so that it's going to work better? Okay. So it's taken a year to get it to the point where it is now, and it works quite well now. And so now we need to start creating more content to write on the program.
To fill in those gaps and perhaps to look at some other misconceptions as well. Yes. So just coming back to the research, because I know that was obviously what you're involved in. Tell us a little bit about your findings in terms of how this set of questions and using the software helped or didn't help learners and teachers. Well, I think you were dealing with
teachers.
These
yes.
are teachers.
Yes. So my sample size was about 1,500 teachers, which I got from throughout the country as I ran workshops last year. And all of them started with a pre-test, ended with a post-test, which was sensing the presence of the impetus misconception. And then what happened in between differed between the three groups. So 529 of the teachers, they engaged with iQuizz electronically.
Okay, so
and
let's just highlight that so that people can see.
So they worked at a computer individually, and as they did so, they were actually working off my computer, which was acting as a server. And everything they did was stored on my computer, and I could export it in Excel and look at what was happening there to make sense of it. And then 718 of them, there weren't computers available, so I couldn't do that. So instead, I used it as a teaching aid, and I gave them flashcards, and then they had to flash what their answers were. Sometimes I did that, sometimes they discussed with one another. And then the rest, that was the control, they just did the pre-test and then the post-test with no intervention in between.
So all of them did both pre and post.
Right, yes. So that's a reference group. And so what I found is that the next slide is a plot of their post-test relative to their pre-test concerning this misconception. The further the profile lies to the right, the more effective that intervention was. So you can see the computer group. This is actually not the entire group. I filtered to make the three groups comparable. And so the computer group, as in comparable with initial understanding, and profile. So the computer group, you can see, lies very significantly to the right. I tested it with a t-test, and it's extremely significant compared to each of the other groups. The taught group is slightly better than the control group. So what I see from this is that if you've I only had an hour, it was an hour-long workshop. So within that time constraint, the computer group, the computer intervention was more effective than the teaching, but the teaching was better than nothing. But maybe it would be different if one were, because there wasn't really enough time to do the teaching justice, because teaching takes longer than them engaging with the computer, because each one goes at their own pace on the computer. And
was the pre-test and the post-test all at the same time then? Also, was there a pre-test on a particular day, then the intervention?
Oh, no, everything was all on the same day, because it's very difficult to get hold of teachers.
Yeah, sure.
Very, very difficult. So, you know, you take what you can get. So I had them actually for a 2.5-hour workshop, and the first 2 hours, the first hour was for something else, and then this hour was devoted to this. So the hour began with them engaging with the pre-test, and then the intervention, then the post-test. And then, you know, half an hour for whatever, just some admin stuff. So that's how it worked.
Okay. So clearly, iQuizz did help. I mean, that's part of the relevance of that. But I think that one of the critical things is recognizing that this is a strategy that everyone can learn from. You don't have to have the software.
Indeed.
So what steps, what building blocks can an ordinary teacher just watching and participating as a viewer to this, what are the critical things that you would suggest that they could implement in their classroom, in their own teaching process from your research, from your understanding that you've developed here?
I think the first thing is just awareness. Being aware that I might have misconceptions, I must watch out for that.
Yes.
And my learners, not just might, they will have misconceptions.
They will have,
And so listening more carefully to them to try and see what is actually going on in their mind, and not just being so sure of yourself that you've explained it clearly, they must have it. If they don't, it's their fault, they were not listening. But rather, it's my fault, I didn't listen to them, I didn't understand what their problem was, I didn't come from the right angle. So awareness is the first thing. And then after that, I think developing skills of managing dialogue and developing skills of asking powerful questions and creating environments where the learner is comfortable to answer what he really thinks, and then how to take it from there.
So looking at those responses from the learners, and leading them, guiding them to come to the correct conception. That must be the critical part. Yeah. Well, Angela, the last thing I've got to ask you is obviously, I'm sure that this development is going to continue. But if people have questions, I'm sure would like to respond to those. Can people contact you through putting questions on the Teacher Talk Facebook page?
That's right, yes. At the moment, it's only in the prototype form. last year it only worked on a server on my computer, but we've now just recently got it to work off a memory stick or off a disk.
Yes.
It's still rather slow, and we're always trying to improve it and so on, but especially people who'd be prepared to trial it for us and send feedback. That would be fantastic.
Okay, so colleagues, there you go. If you would like to get in touch with Angela, then post it on our Teacher Talk Facebook page, and we'll make sure that you get in contact. If you'd like to have a look at the iQuiz, you're interested in ensuring that your misconceptions around force are dealt with, and that your learners will have the benefit of having a clearer understanding of force and all that applies to mechanics. I'm sure you'll agree that because it's such an important section, not only in physics generally, but also in the exam, that this would be worthwhile. So again, Angela, thank you so much for being with us. We've really enjoyed having you here today, and hopefully we'll get lots of feedback. Guys, we'll see you again. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to join us again next Tuesday for Learn Extra Teacher Talk, focusing on physical science. From me, John, goodbye.